Since the first manned launch in 1783, balloonists wanted to go higher and higher. In 1899, French meteorologist Léon Tézerenc de Bort sent his weather balloons into the stratosphere. Aeronauts were desperate to reach the stars, but they soon found out that their bodies simply couldn't cope. Dr. Andrew Steele is treading in the footsteps of these daredevils.
This is amazing. It's an incredible view. And to think that pioneering aviators would make high-altitude flights in balloons not dissimilar to this one. They rapidly discovered that the atmosphere changes dramatically as you go up. The air gets a lot colder, but it also gets a lot thinner. It gets much harder to breathe. And that's because as the pressure goes down, the oxygen molecules are more spread out, and you just can't breathe deeply or fast enough to compensate for that.
By the end of the 1920s, daring aeronauts had reached heights of 40,000 feet. They took an oxygen supply with them, but they had other physiological problems to deal with.
So what happens to your body as you go up to 12,000 meters and approach the vacuum of space? Well, I don't really want to try that myself, so I've got a little marshmallow man who's going to demonstrate it for me.
Today's flight is only hovering around 2,000 feet, so a vacuum jar and pump will simulate high altitude's unforgiving conditions.
You can see now that as we're sucking the air out of the vacuum jar, the marshmallows are starting to expand, and that's because they contain little pockets of air. And as the pressure on the outside of the marshmallows fall, those little pockets of air start to expand. Now, if that was me going up to ever higher altitude, closer to that vacuum, then the pockets of gas inside my body would start to expand. And as we got to really low pressure, fluids on my exterior would start to boil. Poor guy. What I'm going to do is turn off the pump and then let the air back in. And you can see that as the pressure increases again back in that jar, it squishes him back down to his normal size. Though, I don't think he's ever going to be his former self again.
Traveling beyond the stratosphere was thought to be an impossible feat. Until daring scientist Auguste Piccard proposed an audacious idea. Hidden away in the depths of a Chicago storage facility lies a groundbreaking craft that finally transported man safely into the stratosphere.
Piccard wanted to travel high into the atmosphere to study cosmic rays, and he didn't want to work wearing a cumbersome oxygen mask. So he knew if he was going to do this and survive, he was going to have to take the Earth's atmosphere with him. He came up with the notion of a pressurized capsule.
Piccard turned to a local beer barrel manufacturer to build his airtight two-man gondola.
The capsule is just over 2 meters in diameter, and to keep it as light as possible, it's made from aluminium just a few centimeters thick.
When sealed, the pilots can be kept alive for up to 10 hours inside the gondola through the use of an air recycling system based on submarine technology.
Once inside, the oxygen was supplied by liquid oxygen evaporating from a container, and the carbon dioxide was scrubbed from the atmosphere by a reaction with soda lime.
In 1931, a huge hydrogen-filled balloon successfully lifted Piccard and his assistant to almost 50,000 feet. The two aeronauts were the first men to successfully break through the stratosphere.
It's incredible to think what it must have been like for those two men to look out of this tiny porthole and see for the first time the curvature of the Earth stretching out beneath them. Outside it was freezing cold, it would have been impossible to breathe. They really were incredibly brave pioneers of their time.
As Auguste Piccard safely descended to the mountains of Austria, there was no doubt that he had shaped the future of high-altitude travel.
Piccard predicted that one day we'd all fly high in the atmosphere, above bad weather and where the air resistance is lower. And without his pioneering gondola experiments, commercial air travel and spaceflight would just be a dream.